Hello, hello. Okay, good morning everyone. Good morning everyone and welcome. Great to see such a good turnout on Easter Monday with the sun shining. But obviously we've got a good crowd for a very good speaker today. I have to start off with an apology. It's at the end of last meeting. I somehow had a senior moment. I'd forgotten to make a note of what the next talk was going to be, and I announced a completely different talk, which was nothing whatsoever to do with Purview 3A, so my apologies for that. As usual, we'll start off with notices from Yvonne.
Morning, everybody. It's been a bit of a rushed morning for me, this one. Anyway, first up is a notice from Sue who takes your names as you're coming in. She just wanted to check that you have all signed in, and if you haven't, perhaps you could find her and let her know that you're here. Thank you. So, in no particular order, our next meeting here will be our AGM, so do come along. It's jolly good. So it's Monday, 6th of May here at 10:30. Teas and coffees is beforehand from 10 o'clock. You'll get reports from all the office bearers, which are riveting, honest. And we'll be doing elections, which is a really important thing. And as usual, please do consider nominating somebody. We don't mind a bit of competition, or standing yourself. We still don't have a chair, so think on that. Right, and after the AGM, we have our 40th anniversary celebrations, and you'll have all received the programme that I emailed out fairly recently, I hope. So you'll know that there's a talk from Robert Proctor, who's an ex-chair and a historian. And then we'll have some Scottish songs from Plaid Song. Then there's this optional lunch, which will take place in the hall. It's sandwiches and bakes, I think, and a drink. If you want to book for that, and you do need to book if you want to take the lunch, you need to email John Andrews, who's there at the back at the moment, and cash will be taken on the day for that, and it will cost you £8. And I'm afraid if you've booked in advance for the lunch, you're paying the £8 whether or not you actually eat the lunch, because otherwise we'll be out of pocket, which would not be good. Now, even more excitement. The next social event is Branklin Gardens. That's taking place on Monday the 11th of May, and there'll be a guided tour of Branklin Garden followed by tea and scones in the cafe. And for that you need to email John Babb, and when you receive this by email you'll see how to do that if you don't already have his contact details. Right, next one's about me, partly. Myself and Joan Fraser, who some of you will know, have decided to resurrect a group that was in existence about a year ago called Nature Strolls. Now there is already currently a group called Nature Strolls. That's led by Irene, and it's a dog-friendly Nature Strolls group. And in fact, next year it's going to be renamed Dog-Friendly Trails. Is that right? Yeah, got thumbs up. So meanwhile, Joan and I are going to recreate the Nature Strolls, which was previously led by my brother-in-law, Pete Trant. And we'd really love to hear from you if you'd be at all interested in joining that group, just so we know if we're actually going to get any members. We'll only be walking up to 3 miles, and as the name implies, the emphasis is on enjoying nature and spotting birds and so on. And it will be on a Thursday morning in week 4 from next year. Purview 3A website. Anne's recently been doing some maintenance on it to tidy it up and make it look a bit better. This has resulted in the homepage changing. So if you've bookmarked the old homepage, you'll need to update that. And again, on here, you'll see what you need to point at. And then finally, Registration for next session is on Monday 24th of August, so I look forward to seeing you all there, if not before at the AGM.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Yvonne. That's excellent. Now it's my great pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Duncan McNab, whose website says that he's a songwriter, storyteller, enthusiast and traveller. And I think it's mainly the wildlife enthusiast and traveller. And I think it's the last two of those that we're going to be exploring today. He is going to talk to us on the fascinating subject, that sounds a bit dangerous, camping with lions in the Okavango Delta of Botswana. Thanks very much.
Good morning. Oh, we have sound. First and foremost, can I thank you all for coming out this morning to give me the opportunity to try and persuade you that sleeping in a tent in the wilderness with lions round about, and not just lions, hyenas, all manner of creatures are out there. It's a wonderful experience, and it's something you should consider to do. I appreciate it may be a hard sell, but I'm going to give it a go, and maybe by the end of this I'll have persuaded one or two of you. So I've camped with lions on 3 occasions now, and I'm booked up to go on a 4th trip, all in the Okavango Delta. But before I discovered that, I was very fortunate to be able to go on several different safaris in Africa, from the Masai Mara down to the Kruger in South Africa. And they're all superb safaris, but I had a problem with each of them, and that was built into your itinerary. You would find something that would be along the lines of, this afternoon you have time at leisure to relax by the pool. And some of these places have got wonderful pools, absolutely idyllic. Or perhaps you might want to enjoy a cocktail at the bar. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but we've got a swimming pool here, and there's no shortage of bars in Perth. I go to Africa to see the wildlife, not to lie at the side of a swimming pool. So when I was looking for a new safari in 2015, I discovered this mobile camping safari, and that caught my attention. And when I looked into it, it just seemed like it was a safari that was tailor-made for what I wanted to do, maximize the amount of time with the wildlife. So I booked up with a company called Lataka Safaris. You'll hear me mention them a few times. I'll point out, I'm not a rep, I'm not getting commission. I was just a very happy customer of Lataka. So the first one I booked up and went on was in 2016, and it was to the Okavango Delta. Now, this image that you see here, the tree line in the background, I've camped there on a couple of occasions on 2 different safaris. The Okavango is an extraordinary place, one of my favourite places on the planet, and it is one of the world's largest inland deltas. And I suspect when it's at its wettest, it actually is the largest inland delta. And it's an inland delta because the water never ever reaches the ocean. So where is the Okavango? There it is in that top left-hand corner of Botswana. And Artemis 2 is up there in space just now. If they look down on Earth, they will actually be able to see the Okavango Delta. It is that large, and it stands out because it's in the middle of the Kalahari Desert. So the water that comes into the Okavango comes from the highlands of Angola. And it creates this bizarre situation where in the wet season in Botswana, the Okavango Delta is at its driest. And in the dry season, that's when it's at its wettest. And that might sound a bit odd, but the water, as I say, comes from the Angolan highlands, and it takes months for it to work its way down through all the tributaries, eventually forming the Okavango River, and then it spills out into the Kalahari Desert. And across as much as 150 miles, the variation in altitude is about 2 meters. So it really is flat as a pancake. So that water just spreads out across the desert. During the wet season, there's enough rain there to sustain about 600,000 hectares of lagoons and swamps and rivers. And that changes when the floods arrive from Angola. And that increases it by about 1.2 million hectares. So it is just a massive, massive area. And that, in order to do that, it takes 2.5 trillion gallons of water each year to come down that Okavango River. It's just an absolute wildlife haven because, as I say, it's in the middle of the Kalahari Desert, but there's water there all year round, and that just draws in the wildlife. So it's the wildlife that I go for, and I'll concede that the fellow on the left there isn't a fish. But in the Delta, you'll find as many as 89 species of fish. You've got 64 species of reptile, many of whom feed on the 89 species of fish. You also, if you're an ornithologist, a birder, a twitcher, whatever you want to call yourself, the Okavango Delta is a paradise for bird watchers with nearly 500 different species. And not only that, so many of them are absolutely spectacular, and they are there in great abundance. If you're a botanist, there's over 1,000 different types of plant out there. It is, as I say, it's like a Garden of Eden in the middle of the desert. But the reason I go is the big fellow on the left there, and that's to see the 130 different species of mammal that call the Delta their home. So if we look into the Delta a little bit closer, it's that fan shape. The bit coming in from the left-hand top corner there is known as the panhandle. And as the water comes down from Angola, once it's cleared the highlands, there's hundreds of miles where the ground only falls away by about 60 meters. So it's a very slow-moving body of water. And then, of course, when it hits the pancake flat Kalahari Desert Basin, that's when it spreads out. But it's an incredibly dynamic habitat because it takes maybe an elephant to wander through a bit of marsh, and it opens up a new channel and the water will divert there. Or vegetation might block up some channels and push the water elsewhere. So it's ever-changing each year, and it also varies depending on the levels of rainfall that have fallen up in Angola. So for us to get there from the UK, you would fly down to South Africa, to Johannesburg, and from Johannesburg, you would transfer across in another flight that takes about an hour and a half to the town of Maun. And Maun is known as the gateway to the Delta. There are other routes into the Okavango, but the one that's most commonly used is to go to Maun. And there's my wee plane flying across. I had great pleasure in doing that. That's good. So Depending on how much money you spend, there are different options available. For example, you can arrive at Mown Airport. It's a great big runway with about 5 buildings at the side. So it's nothing like Edinburgh or Glasgow airports, much smaller than that. But they do small flights, aircraft that maybe take 6 people, and they'll fly you out into the delta where there's grass landing strips. If you're not as wealthy as that, and I include myself in that category, I choose a different option. And your safari guide will bring the safari vehicle to the airport, meet you at the airport, and you drive out into the wilderness. Now, if you fly, you're not going to see any animals from up there. You might see a couple of elephants here and there. But if you drive, you will encounter certainly elephants, guaranteed to see elephants. You'll see all sorts of antelope like kudu, impala, there'll be giraffe, zebra. I've encountered lions on the drive out to the first campsite. And I should say, the ones that I've done, we've always had 2 different camping areas. So the first one we go to is to an area called the Kwai Concession, which is a community-owned area around the River Kwai. And just in case you're wondering, there is a bridge over the River Kwai. I have crossed it many times. So that image there, the black bit, is the tarmac. And after you run out of tarmac, you're onto dirt tracks, and you're heading out into the wilderness. And that's pretty much where you're going to start encountering the wildlife. And to put that into context, I suppose it's a bit like driving from Perth up to Inverness, but the tarmac runs out at Ballinluig. It's that kind of thing. And that journey will take you maybe 4.5, 5 hours. It depends on what wildlife you see en route, because your driver will stop and talk about the animals and let you take photographs and such like. So there's 2 reasons why we go to the Kwai Concession. And this fellow here was my all-time favourite guide. He was a gentleman called Ace. And I thought that was a pretty naff name. But in actual fact, he lived up to that name. He was utterly superb. And you'll notice he's carrying a rifle. And because he is armed, he can take you on a walking safari, where you get to walk out into the bush on foot. You won't necessarily see any of the big animals. You walk along, it gets you to walk in single file, so that, for example, if you come into a clearing and there's some elephants there, they only see that narrow profile rather than everybody spread out in a big group. So, as I say, you won't see many big animals. Most of them, if they hear you coming, they just melt away. But you'll see small animals like dwarf mongoose. For the birders, you get close up to lots and lots of bird life. And your guide will be able to show you all the tracks, and he reads it like a newspaper and can show you what's happened the night before and what animals have been there. So it really is interesting. You might even get to have a little game, a challenge, to identify which animals dropped what droppings, because they're all different, and it's good fun to try and do that. The other thing you can do at the Kwai Concession is you can go out on a nighttime game drive. And each night you're in Kwai, you will get to go out on a night excursion. And you get sightings like this. The driver will drive along, and in one hand he's got a white searchlight, and he's looking for the reflection of animals' eyes. And when he sees that, he flicks a little switch, and a red filter comes down so as not to blind the animal. This fellow here, he was one of 3 male lions who were moving into a territory that was not their own. And he caused a bit of panic. The 13 cubs and lionesses all did a runner to get away from this guy. So those are the 2 principal things that you get to do in the Kwai concession. And after 3 or 4 days, you move on to your next campsite, which is the Maremi Game Reserve. And it is just amazing, the wildlife within the game reserve. But you have to have a permit to get in. Your guide will have arranged all of that, but you're not allowed to take a weapon into the game reserve. So without the weapon, he's not allowed to take you on a walking safari. So that's one of the reasons that we go to Kwai. It's the only place we can do the walking safari. And the other reason is you've got to be back in camp by sundown. So there's no nocturnal game drives inside the game reserve. All vehicles must be back in camp as the sun goes down. So it's a camping trip. Well, this is the sort of tent that you would expect. Lots of different companies, apart from Lataka Safaris, use this style of tent. You can see there, you got a couple of camping chairs, and there's a couple of sort of canvas wash-hand basins. The camp staff will come around in the morning with hot water and fill those basins so you can have a quick wash before you go out on your morning drive. At the rear of the tent, there is an ensuite facility. It's very sophisticated. And inside, you have these camp beds, proper mattresses. They're really, really comfortable. And you can walk about. The tent is, even for tall people, you can move about quite comfortably inside. The green mesh windows allow you to see out, but they allow the air to move through the tent, and they also keep the insects out. At night time, if you're in your tent and you've got the light on, there's a rolled up flap that you can cover the green mesh windows for your privacy. So the door that you see at the back there, that leads out to your ensuite facilities. Now, I'm quickly going to point out my wife is here. I did not take that photograph. That's from Lataka Safari's website, where they're just illustrating, and that is not my wife, I should also add. But it gives you an idea of what to expect. You have a bush shower, which is effectively a tripod with a suspended bucket at the top with, I suppose it's a bit like a watering can rose underneath, with a valve to turn the water on and off. Your camp staff will heat water, and if you want a shower, they'll bring over a bucket of water, and they'll use a rope to lower the bush shower down, fill it up with hot water, haul it up, and leave you to have your shower. Long drop toilet. Once again, camp staff, they're brilliant. They have arrived before you get to the campsite, and they will have dug the long drop toilet for you. The seat is very comfortable. And you'll notice at the side, there's a small bucket there with a trowel, and that's ash from the campfire, and that is your flushing mechanism. So after you've used the loo, a few trowelfuls of ash go down the loo. And when the camp moves on, all the long drop toilets are filled in, and other than flattened grass, there's really not a trace of the fact that we've been there. Now, as I say, my first 2 trips were with Lataka Safaris, and National Geographic did a 6-part documentary series called Safari Brothers. And Lataka is run by these 2 guys. Their father is back in Maun at headquarters but principally it's the two guys that control all the different safaris that are going on at any given time. And during the making of this documentary series, here's one of the brothers doing a piece to camera, and he's waxing lyrical about what a wonderful job he's got, and then all of a sudden there is an ear-piercing scream, and he's off mid-sentence. He just breaks into a sprint, and he's heading to the tent where the scream has come from. He flings the zip door open, dives into the tent, and there's nobody there. The scream is coming from the ensuite facility. So he whips that zip open and dives in to discover a naked lady having a shower, but whilst she's having a shower, this fellow dropped on top of her from the tree up above. So this is an example of how you can get quite close to nature. But for the woman, she would dine out on that for a long, long time, having a shower, a snake falls on top of you, a man bursts in, followed by a film crew. But in fairness, it must have been absolutely terrifying to fall out of your tree and land on a screaming naked woman. The poor snake would have been utterly traumatized. So yeah, she'll dine out on that for some time. But on the subject of dining, this is what you would expect as your dining tent. Wherever possible, they won't put sides on the tent, and it's only in the event of really sort of nasty weather, and that really doesn't happen that often. And you can see in the background there's a couple of other tents, and that's the sort of distance that they set the camp up, so you're not all sort of stacked side by side. So at night time, you will dine by oil lamp. On my first trip there were 14 of us, 2 guides, 2 vehicles, so you sort of split into 7. And on the very first night of my very first camping safari, we're having our evening meal. And you've got 7 down one side, 7 down the other, and a guide at either end. And the 2 guides, Nkosi and Shadrach, good biblical name, they are chatting to us. And bear in mind, we've only just really met, so we don't know one another. I was a solo traveller because I couldn't persuade my wife to come and camp with lions. So, but there were 1 or 2 other solo travellers as well. And the guides, in order to get us talking to one another, they said, right, let's go around the table and you tell us what you would like to see on this safari, and we'll tell you whether or not that is a likely occurrence. And so you got the sublime to the ridiculous. I would love to see a baby giraffe. And the next one, I want to see a hippo eating a crocodile. All this sort of stuff. And it gives the guides an idea of what the group is interested in, and they will try and tailor the safari to what the group want to see. When it came to me, I'm very fortunate. As I say, I've been on other safaris before I started doing the camping ones, and my all-time favourite African animal is the spotted hyena. Now, they get a bad press. People think they're ugly and that they're evil and that they're scavengers and they're brutes. But they are the most amazing animals, and I could do a whole talk on their sex life alone. They are absolutely amazing. But I won't do that today. But on all the other safaris I'd been on, I'd never seen one. And Shadrach, the guide, said, I think I can guarantee you before the end of this safari, we will find you a spotted hyena. So I was quite pleased with that. And then they got up and headed off to their tents. and left us getting to know one another over a glass of red wine or a beer, because they do have a bar, even though you're out in the wilderness. And so we're chatting away, and about 20 minutes later, I got a tap on the shoulder. And I turned round, and it was Shadrach. And he said, "Excuse me, sir, would you please come with me?" And the table went quiet, conversation died, and I'm thinking, oh, there's something wrong at home, or what have I done that I shouldn't have done? And Shadrach took his head torch off and shone it on the ground and said, "Just watch where you put your feet, but follow me." And we walked off into the darkness. And I was so out of my comfort zone, it never occurred to me to ask him, "Where are we going? What are we doing?" And we didn't go that far, possibly maybe 150 meters, maybe getting on for 2 at the most. And all of a sudden, he stopped and he lifted up his head torch and said, "Meet your first hyena." And she was right there in front of me, this huge female hyena. And Shadrach very quietly explained that when the hyenas twig that there's been a camp set up, they'll gather on the periphery and wait for everybody to go off to their tents and go to sleep, and then they'll sneak into the camp and see if there's anything worth scavenging. And this particular hyena was just an early version of that. So we were no more than, I would think, maybe 3 meters apart. And there was absolutely no sign of fear from the hyena. I can't say that that was reciprocated. But there was no aggression. She just stood there and looked at us. And then Shadrach said, "Right, we'll just quietly back off," and we walked back into camp. So that was my first ever encounter with a spotted hyena, and it's one I will not forget. And this image here was taken with a trail camera about 3 o'clock in the morning. That's a hyena walking through another camp that I was on. The light under its belly, that's the campfire behind it. And the fire doesn't concern the hyena in the slightest. So you do get the wildlife coming into camp. On that same trip, at the back of my tent, I had a trail camera set up, and a hippopotamus. We were having our evening meal at the same time as this hippo was wandering past the back of the tent. Now, I know this is called camping with lions, and lions can be scary and dangerous and all of that, but the hippo kills more people in Africa than any other animal. They are seriously grumpy, unpredictable, incredibly fast, and incredibly dangerous. And as an example, we drove up beside a lagoon where there were some hippos, and this fellow did not appreciate us taking photographs of his wives. And this was his threat display to advise us to move on. You can see the impressive dentistry that he's got there. I'm not sure what the gargling was all about, but he definitely got his message across. So hippos, you are very, very cautious around hippos. So the vehicle that you travel in, it will vary depending on which company you go with. The vehicle of choice is the Toyota Land Cruiser, and that's principally because they're virtually indestructible. And you'll see there, this was the other half of the 14 of us. So you see 7 guests in the vehicle, and you've got somebody in the front beside the guide, and in the back you've got 3 tiered seats. There's no side bars, so your view of the wildlife is basically uninterrupted. Each of those 3 tiered seats could hold 3 people. They're quite broad, but they never do that, and they leave the centre of each bench seat for you to put your bag down or your binoculars or your camera, whatever it happens to be. But they are absolutely ideal vehicles for being in the Delta. The canopy overhead keeps the sun off you. And a tip, if you're going to do this, what happens is that there's a sort of unwritten rule where you would rotate. You wouldn't sit in the same seat every day, so you give everybody a chance to move around. My advice would be, if you sit on the left-hand side today, make sure you're on the right-hand side tomorrow, because if you're on the left-hand side, that's the arm that's going to get suntanned, and this one won't. And if you want a balanced suntan, make sure you alternate day to day. So lots of water in the Delta, but the vehicle is more than capable of dealing with that. You can maybe see the gap there between each of the benches at the back there. You can see that gap up the middle where you've got plenty and plenty of room. But there's water in that shot. You do get more water. And in some cases you think, is this wise? But by and large, the guides know where they can cross lagoons and swamps and rivers, and they're pretty good at it. So you're out first thing in the morning before sunrise, and by mid-morning you might be getting a little bit peckish. So they'll park up under a shady tree, and they've got the camping chairs there for you to have a relax. They carry flasks of boiling water, so they make tea and coffee for you. They have boxes of biscuits and cakes. It's all very civilized. And inevitably, somebody might be thinking, what happens if you need the loo? Well, what happens is they will park up and they'll tell you to stay in the vehicle. The guide will get out and for example, if it was this place, they would go and check the bushes around about, and once they're certain that there's nothing dangerous in there that's going to cause you any grief, they'll come back and say, right, ladies, you can mark your territory in those bushes, and gentlemen, you can mark your territory in those. And that's pretty much how it operates. But where they park up, it's just wonderful to sit there with your cup of tea or your cup of coffee, and they'll do it in a place where you've got something to look at. And for example, in this case, there's a few zebra there, one or two Egyptian geese down at the water's edge, and those antelope are called red lechwe, and they're aquatic antelope. Absolutely ideally suited to the Okavango Delta and all its waters. And you'll notice their rump is higher than their shoulders. And that's because they have these incredibly powerful hind legs to allow them to run through water. So if they're threatened, the first place they head for is into the water, because predators can't keep up with them. So that's the red lechwe, and you'll see lots of those in the Delta. What you will see a lot of are elephants. There's 130,000 of them in the Okavango. And in fact, they're almost at problematic numbers. But you can guarantee you will see elephants each and every day. They're all over the place. And you will get some wonderful views of them. This is just stop the vehicle to allow some pass in front. It might be 2 or 3 elephants. It could be a breeding herd of 50. You just never know what you're going to encounter, which is one of the wonderful things about the Delta. All these tracks are twisting and curving, and you're always going around a corner not knowing what you're going to encounter. So you will get very close. I was speaking to somebody. I've been in a situation sitting in the front of the vehicle when a female elephant came across to examine us, and from my nose to the end of her tusk was about that distance. and that's a time where you find that you've stopped breathing, and you sit very, very, very still. So you will get close enough to take maybe a photograph like this. This is an elephant's eyelash. So I don't think there's any mascara there, but yeah, you will encounter lots of elephants. And you've got to remember that it's nature that you're out in amongst, and you will see some things that aren't always that nice to view. This baby elephant lost its trunk, and absolutely full of life and vitality, playing with the other young elephants. However, when it gets to the stage where it can't suckle from its mother, then its days, sadly, are numbered. So just who would have taken the trunk? Probably 3 prime suspects. Lion would be one, crocodile would be another, maybe surprisingly hyenas would be another suspect. We don't know the answer to that one. But this was another group of elephants that came down to drink, and you'll see the mother using her trunk to draw up water, which in turn she squirts down her neck. But the baby elephant hasn't got the control of its trunk in order to be able to do that. And for the baby elephant, the easiest way is just to stick its face straight into the water and drink directly into its mouth. And you can imagine if you were a crocodile lurking in that water and you saw that floppy trunk, it would be very tempting. So that's a possible reason that the little one lost its trunk. Far safer way to drink is suckling from mum. And once again, just to give you an indication, I took this photograph from the side of our dining tent. So you do get really, really close. It's my pal Malcolm and I at the side of the dining tent, and there's elephants dotted all around us. It's just a magical place to go. The elephants are out in the river, but you can go out in the river as well in a traditional dugout canoe called a makoro. And once upon a time, they were made from timbers in the delta, but for conservation reasons, they're now made from fiberglass. But they operate exactly the same. And when they told me, you're going to go out in a makoro, my first thought was, is that safe? But it was explained that hippos like to be in water where they can submerge. And when you go out in the makoro, by and large, you're looking at water not much more than about 3 foot deep. So you're unlikely to encounter hippos. But your guides are always highly vigilant because they don't want to bump into one of these either. What you will get to do, though, is take photographs of the animals at the water's edge. And that's my big pal again. He was absolutely enormous, but great to view it from the water. Now then, I'm going to take you back to the camp at the end of the day, and you get in before sundown, and then you have maybe about half an hour to kill before your evening meal is ready. And by the way, the food is astonishingly good. I have never had a bad experience food-wise on these safaris. And this is an AI-generated image just to illustrate this. That's supposed to be me on the left there, writing up my journal, because every time I go, I record what I've seen and what we've done each day. The guy I was sharing a tent with, he was sitting there reading his book, but I became aware of the insects being drawn to the head torch. So I said to Craig, I'm just going in to get some insect repellent and top up on that. And I got up, I walked past the front of him, unzipped the tent, stepped in, pulled the zip down, lifted my bag, put it on my camp bed, and I was just getting the insect repellent out when I heard shouting. At which point, the zip flew open and Craig dived into the tent. "There's a lion in the camp! There's a lion in the camp!" And I said, "You're joking." He said, "No, we have to stay in the tent." And I thought, that's an instruction I didn't really need to be told. But I thought, that is crazy. So if you think back to the green mesh windows in the tent, if you've got a head torch on, it bounces back off the green mesh. So what you need to do to see out is push your face up against the mesh and get the light against the mesh, and it can then penetrate out into the darkness, which is exactly what I did. And what I saw on the other side was a male lion looking straight back at me. I was separated by fine green mesh from Africa's top predator. And if you ever want to count the hairs on the back of your neck, this is an excellent scenario to do it. And he had just wandered into the camp. And what you've got to remember is these are not caravan club pristine campsites. This is just a bit of wilderness where they've set up camp. And basically this lion had come along doing his nightly patrols and discovered all these blooming tents in his territory. So he was just checking it out. But Shadrach and Nkosi came running across the camp with those deadly weapons, head torches, waving and shouting, and the lion saw them coming, and he turned and slinked away into the woods behind the camp. And shortly afterwards, Shadrach came round. "It's okay, he's gone now, you can come out." And he was about 300 yards away at that point. But it was an interesting experience, and a lot closer than I ever wanted to be to a male lion. This next image is it's a genuine photograph other than the lion. I've dropped that into the image just to sort of show you where he was. So I was sat where I'm sitting there. Craig was in the other chair, and when I got up to go in the entrance to the tent, that's where the lion was, and we had absolutely no idea that he was there at all. Next morning, we found him about half a mile away from the camp, and he was just lying there in the morning sunlight. So, because there's so much game in the Okavango, there are lots of predators, and lions you will see aplenty. These are just some of the many images I've got at home of lions that we've encountered. They even occasionally put on a little display for you and let you see what their teeth are like. You definitely don't want to get too close to those. And it was after I got home and related the tale of the lion on the other side of my tent window that my sister sent me a link about a researcher who had been camping in the same area that I was camping in, and an emaciated lion who possibly hadn't eaten for as much as 3 weeks. He was just skin and bone, but he tried to get into the tent and attack this guy out of desperation. And you can see there, I think it says, 16 huge fang marks. Now, you can imagine the kudos down the pub when you're there. "Have you seen my fang marks?" He would dine out in that for a while. But he was a lucky guy, but that is so unusual. It's almost unheard of. And it certainly doesn't put me off going back. So, as I say, I've booked up for another trip with Lataka. I've started packing. The first thing in the bag, because it can get kind of scary. But so my first encounter with the hyena, I got a closer one. This was a hyena. We were actually parked up, and the hyena came up the track towards us and walked right past the side of the vehicle. I could have put my hand out and patted him on the head. The fact that I've got two hands tells you I didn't do that. But he was so close with the lens I had on my camera, I couldn't actually get properly focused on him. On another occasion, came round the corner, and there was a leopard in the middle of the track. And she was busy sniffing some scent in the grass at the side of the track. And she wasn't overly impressed that we had turned up and disturbed her. And like the hyena, she walked right up the side of the vehicle. And fortunately for me, it was the side that I was sat on. And bear in mind, these are open-sided vehicles. And she stopped, and she looked right down the barrel of the lens of my camera and snarled. And that's another occasion where it's good to count the hairs on the back of your neck. Those eyes just bore right into you. On another occasion, going to the hyena den to see if they had any cubs. And en route, we discovered 7 of the hyenas busy fighting over the leftovers from a kill, which they themselves had killed probably an hour and a half earlier. And if you can't tell what it is they've killed, that's the leg of a baby elephant. And that is why I said possibly the one that lost its trunk, it could well have been hyenas. People think they're scavengers. Hyenas kill, or they eat more than 60% of their food that they've killed themselves. They're much more predator than they are scavenger. So hopefully that gives you a wee bit of an idea of what a camping safari can deliver. As I say, I went with Lataka. There are many other companies out there that do camping safaris, but it is a magical experience. What I would say is, if you're sitting there thinking, whoa, I'm too old to be doing that, or that's too scary, I'll draw your attention to this lady. She was on my first camping safari, and she was just the most adorable lady. She was absolutely lovely, and she decided to celebrate her 80th birthday by going on a camping safari. But this was not her 80th birthday. This was on her 84th birthday, and she had done it each year from when she turned 80. So in that image, she is 84 years old, having a ball, living life to the full. When we got back to Heathrow, I was saying cheerio to her, and I said, "Are you wait to put your feet up now and have a rest?" And she goes, "Well, for 2 weeks, and then I'm off to India looking for tigers." So, you know, don't think that you're too old to do an adventure like that. So I'll finish off with this little video, just to give you an idea of what it's like. And I'll just, there we go. Oh, we've lost. There we go. So, you're up before the sun. Vehicles are all prepped, ready for you. The sunrise in the Delta is always superb, as are the sunsets. And depending on the time of year you go, it can be quite wet. You've got some wildebeest walking along here, paddling through the waters. But equally, it can be quite dusty. This is the hyenas again, with another leg from the elephant. So it depends on the time of year. Yellow-billed stork having a quick scratch. Giraffe eating soil to get the minerals rather than drinking. You get bizarre birds like the hammercop, named principally because its head's like a hammer. Female kudu with enormous ears. And this is what it's like in the front seat of a Macoro, gliding through the lagoons and all the water lilies. You'll get zebra, blue wildebeest, tesserae, a bit frisky in the morning. And this is a monitor lizard. You get rock monitors and water monitors. They are big, big beasts. And this is a type of bird that you'll see all over the place. A spur fowl. If you look at the legs, you get a clue where its name came from. It's got these spurs built in. This is Nkosi, who made the mistake of slowing down when he met a hole in a lagoon. He got his front wheels out, but his back ones bedded in. So he's asked us in the other vehicle to come through and tow them out. Shadrach didn't want to get stuck, so he's going at speed, which throws up a bit of a bow wave, swamping the other vehicle, and then he parks up. And even in a situation like this, I had to get permission to get out of the vehicle to film what happened next. So they've rigged up a tow line. That's Nkosi getting back in the vehicle, and you'll give him the thumbs up, and Shadrach will come to the rescue and pull them out. But you can see the people on board are actually quite happy. They're all smiling. It all adds to the sense of adventure that you got stuck in a lagoon in the Okavango. Your camp, midday, when you go back for lunch, looks a bit like this. And here we have, as I say, lots of elephants. When I filmed this, we had about 50 elephants around the camp. And as the camera pulls back, you'll see my tent. So, I mean, literally, they're right behind the tent. And this was filmed from the dining tent. So the elephants are having their lunch, and we are sat there having ours. A lion who doesn't like to get his feet wet will use a bridge where possible. And in the mornings, you can get dew, like in this scene, but equally, you can get frost, which is surprising. A couple of jacanas there. More red lechwe, really bonny animals. What lions would describe as fast food. The warthog. And here's that big elephant that we saw earlier on. And he's just munching away on the reeds at the side of the river. And then he picks up our scent. And the old trunk comes up. And I don't think he was impressed with my aftershave, and he's having a good sniff. But as the camera pulls back, you'll see exactly where we are. We're just 3 Macoros rafted together, watching him go about his morning business. Here's the dry-footed lion again, walking straight towards you. And I'm filming the vehicle. And as he walks, he goes right past the side of the vehicle. You'll catch his eyes glancing up. There he goes. And he just keeps on walking. Wild dogs, the rarest of all predators in Africa. And they love eating these impala, sometimes referred to as the McDonald's of the bush, because everything loves to eat them. And here's more elephants down for a midday drink. And once again, my aftershave is causing a bit of consternation. I think might even be making our eyes water. Yeah. So there we are, just after our lunch. We're just out taking photographs and watching the elephants go about their business. Lion with an itch to scratch. So he'll get his mane sorted out so he's looking his best. And these are open-billed storks flying on the thermals. This is one of the lionesses that ran away from the invading males. And when they look at you, their faces are absolutely amazing. And as the day is drawn to a close, here we've got a mother leopard with her cub having a bit of a rough and tumble. And then you're in camp by sundown. And as you're approaching, the camp staff are getting the campfire organised for your return using the traditional method of a litre of diesel onto the embers. And say what you like about that, it's effective. And then you have this short hiatus of maybe half an hour before your evening meal is prepared for you. So you can sit round the campfire and you can have a glass of wine. They do have spirits, but I've never been brave enough to try them. So it's usually either red wine or a beer. And that hopefully gives you a little idea of what it's like to go camping with lions. And on that note, if you have any questions about camping with lions, I'm more than happy to attempt to answer them. Whether or not I know the answers remains to be seen. That's it.
That was absolutely excellent. Questions? I'm doing the roving microphone today because Dave's not here. This one, thank you.
Thank you very much. That was fascinating. And can I just say, you did that so I don't have to.
You know you want to.
Maybe. I'm really intrigued. I didn't know about the Okavango River. I didn't know about this delta. Does water from it end up in the ocean? Or
no, it doesn't.
Just stays and eventually evaporates in the
desert. It
desert?
spills out. Some of it is absorbed into the sand of the Kalahari, and the rest dissipates through evaporation.
So does it become saline, these marshes?
No. However, if you turn the clock back 60,000 years ago, part of the river system of the Okavango flowed into an absolutely gigantic lake called Lake Magadigadi. And 60,000 years ago, there was movement of tectonic plates, and it cut off this water supply to Lake Magadigadi, which has subsequently dried out. And this was a lake that took up about a third of Botswana. It was absolutely huge. It's all dried out, and there are massive salt pans where Lake Magadigadi used to be. But in the delta, you will find there are clearings where it does look like there's been salt deposits there. You saw the giraffes, they lick these deposits for the mineral content. But it's because there's water there all year round. And you've got all the vegetation, you've got all the animals moving back and forth. It's not particularly, I've got to say, I haven't been in for a swim, so I can't say exactly how salty it is, but it's definitely not salinated water.
Thank you very much, that was wonderful. Based on your experience, is it the best time to go on a safari?
Well, it really depends on a number of factors. If you go in January, that's the peak of the rainy season, and that's not really ideal. If you go in the middle of their winter, which would be July, August time, that's when the delta is at its driest on the periphery, and the animals all congregate. The foliage isn't quite as green, and it's much easier to see the animals. I'm going back in March, the tail end of March, and that's just at the end of the rainy season, and as such, the whole delta will be green and lush. You won't see, you could be driving past and there might be lying in the long grass and you might miss them, whereas in drier times you would get to see them. But the whole place looks absolutely stunning, and there's enough wildlife there that you will not go short of sightings. The other factor is the peak time for wildlife sightings is also the most expensive. So you will pay a huge amount more to go in peak season. So I tend to go not in the off season, but on that sort of shoulder season, just before it kicks into high season and all the prices go sky high. So it's very much a personal choice, what you want to see and how much you want to spend.
Any other questions? Oh, over there. Thanks.
Well, thank you. Really interesting. But how was your holiday, or did you say? And how expensive is it? I don't, just roughly.
Yeah, money. Yeah, it tends to control everything. On each of those trips, it's a 10-day safari. But in fairness, your first day is flying from the UK down to Johannesburg and then out to the Delta at Maun. But you arrive after having flown overnight, and you're into your vehicle, and there's no time to sleep. You're going careering through the wilderness with all this wonderful wildlife round about. And so by the time you get to your camp, albeit it's your first day, you've had a big game drive. The cost, I've got to be careful here, my wife's listening to this. The first one I did in 2016 was about £3,500. It's a little bit more than that now. The one I've just booked up on, it's kind of hard to say what the eventual price will be, thanks to Mr. Trump and jet fuel being a rare commodity now. But I've set aside at least £5,000 to do it next year, and it'll probably cost a little bit more than that. So it's not an expense. It's not a cheap option, which is why I don't go every year. If I could afford to go every year, I would be doing the same as the 84-year-old lady. I'd be out there. So I save up when I finish one, getting ready for the next.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for giving us such a lovely Easter Monday morning.
I've been lucky enough to, I was in Namibia last year, lucky enough to see some of these things, but I did it in a little bit more comfort, I'm afraid, and it was a softie and stayed in a proper room in the reserve. A fantastic look at what you can see in that particular area, and I'm sure by the attentive faces, everybody's enjoyed your job every bit as much as I have. Will everybody say a very good thank you very much for such a lovely night.
Good.
No, it's just...
Yeah.
Can I just very quickly ask you, so you're coming to do a talk at somebody's home
Yes.
on the 16th, and I'll make sure you've got the address and everything. Now, I'm sure you said you needed a projector and a screen.
If that's possible.
Now, I have a slide projector. I've just ordered